Today we're diving into one of the most unique and thought-provoking films of the last decade, Sorry to Bother You. This is a black comedy sci-fi film that is both hilarious and terrifying, and it follows Cassius Cash as he tries to survive and succeed in a world that seems designed to keep people down. If you haven't seen this film yet, I highly recommend it, but fair warning, things get very wild very quickly, so consider this a spoiler warning. If you don't want to get spoiled, stop the video, go watch the film, and then come back and let's discuss. So let's start with the first act. From the beginning, the film builds this world where there's a sharp line between the haves and the have-nots. Cash is firmly on the have-not side. He's living in his uncle's garage, which, by the way, he can barely afford, and we see how his family struggles to make ends meet. His girlfriend Detroit is a performance artist trying to carve out her own creative space, while Cash just wants to get by. Cash gets a job as a telemarketer at a company called Regal View, and that's where the world gets really interesting. We hear about the dream job, power caller, early on, which sets up Cash's wants, success and financial stability. But there's also Worry Free, a service that lets you sign a lifetime contract to work for them in exchange for being taken care of for the rest of your life. At first it seems like a dream, but the subtle horror in that idea is that freedom and autonomy come at a steep price. Isn't it strange how a film can feel so exaggerated and yet so familiar to the world we live in? Soon Cash is asked by a colleague, Squeeze, to help unionize the workers, and just when it seems like he might stick to his principles, Cash discovers that he has a talent for the white voice. This is where the movie blends absurd comedy with a sharp critique of race and class. The white voice lets Cash succeed at the company, and yes, it's hilarious, but it also signals a disturbing truth about assimilation and identity. Have you ever thought about what you do if the only way to succeed required changing who you are? Let me know in the comments. In the second act, Cash starts to climb the ladder at Regal View, but it comes at a cost. The company promotes him to power caller, and he's only allowed to use the white voice on this floor. Here he discovers that the company is actually selling weapons and labor through Worry Free, which is horrifying. But the money is too tempting. He can buy a car, pay off his uncle's house, and live comfortably. But in chasing material success, Cash neglects Detroit, the union, and his own ethics. This is where the film gets really darkly funny. Cash tries to cross the union picket line and gets hit with a can and becomes an internet meme. The humor is absurd, but it's also commentary on how humiliation can be monetized in a world obsessed with spectacle. Do you think the film exaggerates this for comedy, or is it closer to reality than we'd like to admit? The story takes another turn when Cash meets the worry-free CEO, Steve Lift. Before he can even hear the CEO's offer, he finds a half-human, half-horse Equisapien, which is the first big sci-fi twist. Lift explains that Worry-Free plans to turn humans into Equisapiens for ultimate obedience and efficiency, and he wants Cash to lead them as a revolutionary figure. The film's surreal twist is jarring, but it's also the perfect metaphor for how corporations exploit workers and control narratives. Cash tries to expose Worry Free by appearing on a humiliating TV show called I Got the Shit Kicked Out of Me, but instead of hurting the company, his video causes their stock to skyrocket. This is where Sorry to Bother You gets really clever. It's not just satire, it's a reflection of how media and consumerism manipulate the public. Even attempts to disrupt the system can end up reinforcing it. The third act is where Cash starts to make amends. He reconnects with Squeeze and Detroit and frees the Equisapiens, leading to a massive protest at Regal View. The protest escalates into a riot when the police arrive. Cash is captured, but the Equisapiens intervene and free him. By the end of the film, we see Cash and Detroit back in his uncle's garage happy, but until Cash transforms into an Equisapien and leads an attack on the CEO Steve Lift. The ending is wild, violent, and thought-provoking. It forces the viewer to question what success, freedom, and morality really mean. The pacing of the film is excellent. Cash's want, the desire to improve his life, drives the story forward, and the film cleverly tricks the audience into rooting for him to become a power caller before revealing the horrifying reality behind the job. It asks a fundamental question. Would you thrive and survive at the expense of others, or would you stick to what's morally right? This is a question many of us face in subtle ways every day. The film is also loaded with symbolism. Race is portrayed through Cash's transformations, from his normal clothes to the white collar suit, the white voice, the bandage, and finally becoming an Equisapien. Cash's journey reflects assimilation, oppression, and identity. The bloodstains on the bandage remind us that no matter how successful he becomes in the eye of the system, he will always carry the mark of oppression. Detroit's performance mirrors this. She exposes the same humiliation without selling out, contrasting with Cash's complicity. Capitalism and consumerism are explored through Worry-Free and the societal obsession with spectacle. Worry-Free manipulates not just employees, but the public, turning pain into profit and humiliation into entertainment. The Equisapiens are literally the embodiment of exploitation, treated like animals for efficiency, while humans cheerfully consume their suffering on TV. It's an exaggeration, but it's disturbingly familiar. Finally, the title itself, Sorry to Bother You, is brilliant. It reflects how people react when confronted with injustice or cause for change. Many would rather not to be bothered with the world's problems. It's a satirical jab at complacency, while also being a very personal human story of transformation, struggle, and moral choice. So here's my question to you. What would you do in Cash's shoes? Would you prioritize survival, comfort, or morality? And what do you think of the Equisapien twist? Comedy, horror, or a little bit of both? Let's discuss in the comments. I'd love to hear your interpretations because this film is endlessly layered and each viewing reveals new details. In the end, Sorry to Bother You is a must-watch for anyone interested in satire, social commentary, or just a story that keeps you engaged while making you think deeply about society. Boots Riley and the cast did an incredible job, from the acting to the world building to the absurdity and the terror of the narrative. This is a film that sticks with you long after the credits roll. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it.